which has been convened by civil society organizations in Zimbabwe that are concerned about the current crisis that our country is facing. My name is Lloyd Kuvea from the Zimbabwe Human Rights NGO Forum to address the issues that we have gathered here to address. We have 4 civil society leaders. I'll ask them to introduce themselves, starting with my good friend, Mr. OK Machisa here, going in that direction. Thank you very much.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is OK Machisa. I work for Zimbabwe Human Rights Association, ZimRights.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Justina Mokoko, and I work for the Zimbabwe Peace Project.
Afternoon, everyone. I'm Touch by Gladys. I'm from Zimbabwe Civil Society.
Thank you so much. So this is our panelists who are going to address the issues that we want to raise and that we want the nation to know about. And we have a press statement that we have prepared. It is going to be read to you by Justina Mkoko, and the other 3 panelists are also going to add to what they would have, what she would have read. They are going to add to what she would have read. After that, we give everybody in the room an opportunity to ask any questions, to make any comments, to add anything. Thank you so much. I'll hand over to Justina Mkoko. Thank you.
Thank you, Lloyd. Thank you once again, everyone, for coming. And we, the institutions who are party to this statement, are concerned by deteriorating economic conditions in the country and the violent state response to civilian protests, especially in the last few weeks. Since January 2016, the country has witnessed close to 40 civilian-led protests. These protests have questioned the social, political, and economic governance of the country, and there's been growing citizen consensus for reform. The calls for reform have been met with state heavy-handedness and the violation of people's rights. During the current month of July 2016, civil society organizations have assisted protesters and hundreds of victims of organized violence and torture in Bulawayo, Harare, and Beitbridge. The majority of these people were victims of random police brutality during and after public protests held across the country from the 1st to the 6th of July 2016. Many injured people could not seek medical assistance because of the heavy police presence in the high-density suburbs. Reports indicated that uniformed and plainclothes police were involved, as well as youth militia dressed in police uniforms. Between the 1st of January and the 15th of July, 354 cases of political violence were reported. It should be noted that ordinary civilians were the majority of victims. Many of them have no non-political or protest group affiliation, nor were they involved in the protests prior to being assaulted. Victims were dragged from their houses after tear gas was fired into their rooms. Uniformed forces were involved in most of the incidents, and dogs were used to indiscriminately savage people who resisted arrest. Citizens who sought medical assistance and counseling following these incidents include 4 members of the National Vendors Union of Zimbabwe after being attacked by anti-riot police on the 15th of July. On the 6th of July, 76 people in Bulawayo and 25 in Harare's Budiliro and Mfakose suburbs sustained various injuries from attacks by the police. In Bulawayo, 43 children were affected by tear gas when police indiscriminately fired tear gas into the Burombo residential flats. On the 4th of July, 41 people sought medical assistance after being assaulted by riot police in Epworth. On 2 July, 3 young people were attacked by a mixed group of military police, the Zimbabwe Republic Police and CIO members in Beitbridge as they walked in the town at night. Arrests of protesters that were attended to by the Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights between the 4th and the 13th of July included 165 in Harare, 107 in Bulawayo, 30 in Matabeleland South, 24 in Matabeleland North, and 6 in the Midlands. 96% of the people arrested within these 9 days were charged with violating provisions of the Criminal Law Codification and Reform Act. 304 stood accused of public violence or inciting public violence, 22 with obstructing traffic, 16 under the Public Order and Security Act, and 1 for attempting to overthrow the government. In order to have a lasting solution to the current challenges, civil society is of the view that there needs to be 1, a holistic and full implementation of the Constitution, especially as it relates to security sector reform and governance, full restoration of the rule of law, respect for basic rights and freedoms, as well as other institutional reforms, which in our view are requisites that will enable Zimbabwe to hold credible elections in 2018. 2, institutional and security sector reform. There is ample evidence that Zimbabwe's security sector remains highly partisan, unprofessional, and politicized. The Office of the Prosecutor General and the Zimbabwe Republic Police remain politicized. 3, reform of the electoral framework and political environment. The capacity of the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission, ZEC, to administer credible elections needs to be addressed, and a clear roadmap for democratic, free and fair elections set out. 4, promoting freedom of expression, free media and freedom of choice. There needs to be greater freedom of expression through the repeal and alignment of media and access to information legislation with the new constitution. Licensing of new radio and television broadcasters to increase media diversity and plurality. Promoting alternative sources of information that include new and social media, and ensuring an independent and genuine public service broadcaster. 5, economic reforms. We believe that in order to attract foreign and domestic investment, the government needs to craft unambiguous policies that generate confidence among investors. A genuine commitment to democratizing economic governance, which includes respecting the rule of law and property rights, will assist in sending positive signals to investors. Having deliberated over several meetings on the current situation in Zimbabwe and the growing tension that is being dually fueled by a growing, restless, economically battered citizenry and an unyielding political leadership in government, we hereby call upon the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission to investigate the incidences of human rights violations that have occurred in the wake of protests by various citizens of Zimbabwe, play its public protector role, and where perpetrators have been identified, their actions should be condemned and they should be made to face the law. To direct the Commissioner General of Police to investigate cases of suspected criminal violations of human rights or freedoms, and to report to the Commission on the results of any such investigation is provided in Section 243, subsection H of the Constitution. To secure appropriate redress for victims of police brutality, including recommending the prosecution of any offending police officers in cases where people were subjected to torture, inhuman and degrading treatment, is provided for in Section 243, subsection G of the Constitution. The Commissioner General of Police to urgently institute a probe of police conduct during the protests and stay away by citizens during the month of July, and ensure that culprits of rights abuses are brought to book. The Ministry of Home Affairs and the Ministry of Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs to condemn the brutalization of citizens by police officers when on duty and make public pronouncements on the illegality of police officers violating the rights of citizens when dispensing their duties. To expedite the setting up of an independent complaints mechanism to receive and investigate complaints of misconduct and abuse of office by members of the security services is provided in Section 210 of the Constitution, and to reassure the public that the police force is bound by the laws of Zimbabwe, in that their conduct must remain guided by the laws of Zimbabwe and be done in a professional and non-partisan manner. Parliament, through the portfolio and thematic committees on justice, legal and parliamentary affairs, human rights, peace and security, to call the respective Ministers of Home Affairs and Justice, Legal and Parliamentary Affairs, as well as the Commissioner General of Police, to appear before Parliament and answer to questions on allegations of police brutality against civilians and misconduct and unprofessionalism in exercising their duties. SADC region civil society organizations to continue supporting and rendering solidarity to the people of the region, particularly those in Lesotho, Democratic Republic of Congo, Mozambique, and Zimbabwe, given the unstable situation in these countries. To continue amplifying key concerns and increase pressure on SADC community and the government of Zimbabwe to urgently address the economic crisis and attendant human rights concerns of citizens of Zimbabwe. SADC heads of state and government urgently condemn the brutalization and heavy-handedness that has been meted out on protesting civilians by the government of Zimbabwe, and urge the government to recognize the constitutionally provided for freedom of assembly and association and freedom to demonstrate and petition. That summit decisively addresses the promulgation of destructive economic policies by Zimbabwe, which have a cross-national effect and that have the direct consequences of limiting trade in the region and curtailing the ability of the most vulnerable in society to attain food security and basic livelihoods. That the summit supports and seriously consider the concerns of the political parties on electoral reforms and the existing playing field, and insist on Zimbabwe meeting SADC principles and guidelines governing democratic elections that should include a non-partisan public media exists that ensures that different political actors have got access to public media, a transparent electoral process that ensures greater transparency in all facets of the process, immediately put in place mechanisms to ensure the existence of a clean voters' roll, a SADC-led election supervisory mechanism for Zimbabwe's next vote to prevent state-sponsored violence, which is in place at least 6 months before the elections and 3 months after. In addition, SADC should urge the political principals in Zimbabwe to have broad domestic, regional, and international observation of the elections in the interest of openness. Facilitate technical support to the Zimbabwe Electoral Commission by credible institutions that provide technical assistance to other SADC countries. And the statement ends here. We have the list of the organizations, which I think you'll be able to glean once you get the statement. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Justina, for that statement. I think it is very comprehensive. What I would do is the panelists have said that because of time and that they would want to address more the questions that come from the floor, we will not ask them to make additions. We will now open to questions and any comments, and then the four panelists will address any issues that you might want to raise with them. Thank you so much. You can raise your hand and identify who you are and where you're coming from, and then we'll ask the panelists to address the questions and issues that you might want to be clarified or to seek any further comments and additions. Thank you. Oh, it seems this my brother. May I identify who you are and your organization?
Yes, in your statement, you mentioned that you observed that the police and the military they remain partisan. that the proceeding you ended up saying you would want to implore the police to investigate some issues of human rights. So, to end the observation, if they show that they are partisan and so forth, how would you expect them to probe issues that will be raised against them? Would the code be made academic? Would we expect any result from such an exercise?
Okay, thanks, Emerson, for that question. I think it has been noted. I will maybe take 2 or 3 more questions before I hand over to the panelists to respond. Yes, sir, my brother.
Privilege from Zimbabwe broadcast. I wanted to ask if you notice the current movement and wave of different protests that we've had and different organizations that are registering their discontent against the government. The civil society seems to be operating loosely. Why is that so? Looking at the fact that the movement or even the civil society is fighting one institution, which is government and probably President Mugabe.
Okay, thank you, Privilege, for your question. It has been noted on coordination. Yes, any other questions or comments? Yes, my brother.
Okay, my name is Chris Mahoya, I write for African News Agency. You spoke about having a SADC-led supervision of elections, but not in the history of SADC's participation in Zimbabwe's elections. They were the only body that okayed the last elections, which were largely disputed. Do you think SADC would be the right bloc to lead the supervision of these elections?
Thanks, Chris, for your question on the role of SADC in supervising elections in Zimbabwe. Maybe one more question before I ask the panelists to respond. Okay, all right. So we'll take those first 3 set of questions and I'll ask the panelists to respond. Would you like to start?
Well, just to indicate that the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission has a mandate to carry towards the safety and protection of human rights of the citizens of Zimbabwe. And precisely why the statement is talking to the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission, picking it and making sure that the police have embarked on serious investigations on all those that perpetrated human rights abuses. And I'm very skeptical to say the police cannot investigate. It's all to do with political will. If there is political will to ensure that the investigations have been put in place, indeed, that will happen. And this is precisely why we have the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. And I want also briefly to speak to the issues of the CSOs operating loosely from the other forces that are happening. I don't think we are operating loosely. And if I would really request and applaud from everybody that we are realizing the impact of what we have been doing all along. So I think it is the civil society that has been engaging citizen participation in whatever issues to do with confronting the government on matters to do with human rights or governance. I think we are not operating loosely. I think we are complementing each other. We don't need to overtake what the other forces are doing, but to buttress what they are doing. And I don't think we are fighting anyone. If there is something that we are doing, we are trying to have the government listen to the citizens of this country. You don't need to beat up people when they tell you that you are walking naked. You better turn around and say, is it true that I am naked? So if you then start shouting at people and yet they're telling you that you are naked, you might need a doctor.
Thank you very much, Mr. Machisa. I see Gladys wants to respond.
No, I just wanted to, buttress some of the points that have already been alluded to by OK Machisa regarding to the issue of the partisan police. I think the police, just like any other, arm of government, they are bound by the Constitution. And I think it is our role as civil society organizations to point out instances where we feel that they are not executing, their role in line with the Constitution. And we will continue to hold, various duty bearers to account. I think it's our role as watchdogs to do that, and we will continuously, raise the red flag if they need for us to do that. Then on the issue of civil society operating loosely, I think the fact that we are coming together and speaking, with one voice on these issues, on the position of civil society and our recommendations, is testimony that we are actually, coming together and trying to give one voice on what is happening in the country. So I would agree with Mr. Machisa that we are actually not, speaking over each other or, not speaking with one voice, but we are trying to give a unified, position. And you would see the number of organizations that signed on to this statement that's exactly what we are trying to do. I will leave the question on SADC to Zee.
Yes, Zee, can we trust SADC to supervise the elections?
That's fine. I think it's Chris, yeah. I think with SADC, the first point we have to appreciate is that we cannot exclude SADC from a solution in Zimbabwe, precisely because we are part of the SADC bloc, the 14 member countries. We do appreciate the weaknesses and the shortcomings of SADC as a political body, but we also know and understand that in terms of Article 4 of the SADC Treaty, there is a common agreement that there must be democracy, rule of law, and good governance and protection of human rights in the region. And it is that commitment that has been made by SADC states that we want to hold them to account to. And you may know that there is precedent of SADC intervening in Zimbabwe where there has been a situation that threatens human rights. Most of you will recall the Government of National Unity, which was SADC brokered. And it might not have been to the best test of everybody, but there is consensus that it assisted to bring back sanity in a situation that had gotten out of control. And the indicators, when we look at what is happening now, it's like weather. We see all the indicators of a storm coming through. And we think that the solution is holistic, and SADC is part of that solution. And it's not just SADC, as you heard from our statement, it's regional partners, it's also local partners that include human rights bodies such as the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission. So we see a holistic approach required to deal with the Zimbabwean situation, not just one issue, having a one solution on its own.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. I think that was handled very well. Yes, sir. I'll take more questions. Is there another bite? It's a follow-up.
Just a follow-up on the question that I asked.
All right.
Why I had said so, to say the civic society is operating loosely. If you notice, what we notice every day is we have Tajamuka, they do their own protest. You have maybe, we may not mention Pastor Ivan. Pastor Ivan is an individual like me, he's a citizen. But the different movements, and even different civil society organizations, that one issues a statement from that corner, that one issues a statement from that corner. Isn't there a possibility of having a coordinated voice and approach to the issues that citizens are trying to raise against the government?
Okay, I just wanted to immediately say that, if you look at the statement, I think which was read, you will see that there are organizations there which are over 30 NGOs in Zimbabwe that came together and they've now issued this particular statement. I think I would like to think that it's an indication that civil society organizations are speaking with one voice, but I'll leave it to the panelists to address those issues. Just my colleague there.
My question is, do we foresee any possibility of having interest litigation in relation to these human rights abuses, so that at least you may expose them? And we have seen, for instance, in the case of Miras Gerek, where the courts went first to the facts. They are not afraid to go in the interest of the victims. Could we see those public interest litigation?
Okay. Thank you. Any other questions? Okay, if you may, yes, if,
After the first wave of protests, the government, particularly Home Affairs Minister and Commissioner Strong, threatened to descend heavily on protesters, claiming all those found on the wrong side of the law will face the penalty. And in his threats, he made several allegations about foreign involvement and so forth. But of particular concern is his threat against citizens. A civic society, have you made some practical steps to engage government, particularly the Home Affairs Minister, directly to have an interface with him, to have his response when his threats to innocent citizens who want to take to conduct peaceful protest against what they describe as government misrule?
okay. All right, let me ask. I think those questions are loaded. The first one is really, I think my brother there is persisting on the issue of a fragmented response by civil society. I think maybe he really needs a more comprehensive response to that. And then there's the issue of public interest litigation, whether that is going to happen on behalf of the victims. And then the threats by the Minister of Home Affairs against citizens. Maybe you could address those questions.
Maybe I can I can attempt to answer this question. I think what we need to understand is that the protests that we've been seeing over the couple of, over the past few days are spontaneous. These are, protests that are being organized by citizens, and they're actually testimony to the magnitude of challenges that we face in this country. It's no longer up to civil society alone or political actors, but the citizens have started feeling the pinch. I think you'd agree with me that we have seen a couple of policies that have been elected by the government that are anti-people. We have a government that has presided over the economic demise that we have seen in this country, the economic crisis. Then the same government then comes up with policies that bans import, food imports and other items. You see, and it's within a context where the country is facing, a drought. People have been pushed to go into the informal sector. They are going to South Africa, going to Botswana, getting foodstuffs and other items to come and sell. Then the same government then goes and puts in place such a policy. So you see, I would actually say some kind of policy discord. It looks like you're dealing with two governments that do not understand that they've presided over these challenges that we are facing. So it follows that they need to be lenient on the people in terms of making sure that there are avenues for them to pursue their different trades, if I can put it that way. So I think for me that is the greatest challenge that we have. So the people are now responding to what is happening on the ground by getting into the streets, and the Constitution allows them to do that because they do have the right to be in the streets to demonstrate and to petition. But where we have a challenge is when the government now responds in terms of threats, intimidation, arrest, and so on. And we do not think that a government that is even failing to provide for its civil servants in terms of providing salaries should be responding in that way. We would have thought that the government was going to be able to engage with citizens and say, what are the issues? How best can we resolve these issues? So I think our recommendation is really for the government to be able to engage citizens and with the view of finding solutions to some of the challenges that we are facing, as opposed to giving out threats, intimidation, and so on, like what we've been seeing.
I just wanted to buttress the question on civil society being loosely knit. I think from our list of the people who have signed to this statement, we have a lot of coalitions. Crisis in Zimbabwe Coalition have signed to this, and there are a whole lot of organizations that are under them, the National Association of Youth Organizations, the National Association of Non-Governmental Organizations, the Zimbabwe Election Support Network, and the Zimbabwe NGO Human Rights Forum. So all those are networks that have a whole lot of civil society organizations under them. And I believe that the message that we are bringing out today is actually speaking with one voice. And I think Everson was talking about where accusations of foreign involvement have come in. Well, that is not new. And I don't think Zimbabweans need to be told about a foreigner that they don't have food on the table, that they are being brutalized by the police. And I think as under the banner of the NGO Forum, we have come up with a raft of strategies in terms of engaging with government and also parliamentary portfolio committees. And this is the beginning of the strategies that we have set out. And I think in the next few days, we are going to be engaging government as well as parliament and also the Zimbabwe Human Rights Commission.
I also want to add on, it's to do with threats. You talked about Minister Chombo threatening the people. I mean, this is not new to us. People have threatened on things that are very normal and can be accepted in any community. Everson, if I tell you that your zip is open and you don't react in the time frame that I expect you to react, and you attack me for telling you that your zip is open, it's naturally, I think there's something wrong with you. This is exactly what the people of Zimbabwe are saying. Look, these are the issues that we want to be addressed. And in turn, what do they get? Dogs? What do they get? Button sticks? What the war veterans are actually saying almost the same thing. That kind of a thing. Exactly what we've been calling on in terms of the system, that look the way that you are behaving in terms of the welfare of the people of Zimbabwe. And this is exactly what these other forces are doing. So we don't need to be competing by citizens, because citizens are now, they realize that the elasticity band has come to its maximum stretch.
Maybe let me deal with
Can you just do the public interest litigation? Then I've got Peds, I recognize Peds at the back then.
Okay, yeah, I think it was Mr. Zulu. He asks whether there will be public interest litigation. The short answer is there is already public interest litigation as one of the multi-pronged strategies that we are engaging in. And from where I come from as Zimbabwe Lawyers for Human Rights, our main contribution is to support, together with other law-based organizations such as NGO Forum, the law-based approach to advocacy. And from the legal point of view, our fulcrum is the Constitution. We are targeting litigation that protects the Constitution. Some of you may be aware, I'm counsel for the Mayor Maninyeni, and one of the things that we did was to defend the Constitution when Minister Kasukwere attempted to remove a lawfully elected mayor from office. Precisely why we took that litigation was because we wanted to restore the constitutional democracy that is there. And these are the kind of things that we are challenging, where a minister focuses on the wrong things, focuses on political machinations, instead of focusing on the real issues that the people that are saying. And there will be more litigation that seek to enforce constitutionalism. You will see there are a lot of cases that are already before the courts that we've brought. We are representing some people that have been accused of criticizing the president. Some of you might be familiar with the insult law, section 33, which is being wantonly used by the state. If you speak anything, today, with your reckless statements so far. But these are the problems that we have where the state is ruling by the law instead of ruling in terms of the law. And definitely there will be more litigation to address those challenges.
Thank you very much, Zimbabwe. This is the last round of questions that I will take. Dr. Rohanya there, and then yes. I'll come to you.
Okay, thank you. I want to attempt to answer the question raised by previous on the civil society coordination. I think what you see generally, not simply civil society, is a reflection of the changing political economy of the state, marked by monumental informalization of the economy, where you see poverty everywhere you go. So, because of the changes in the political economy of the state, that affects every citizen, that affects every institution, private and public, and also affecting the state. It affects you and I. It affects every member here present and every organization here present. But what is happening now is what is called interest aggregation, where you see even in ZANU, they are pointing out the problem that Mugabe and ZANU are the problem. So, you know, a hungry man is an angry person. So what is happening is that despite the poverty we have as NGOs, despite the poverty that citizens have, they've understood and underlined the point and the question, that the question of livelihood, how to survive, how to send your children to school, how to access medication, how to access health care, how to access medicine. So in order to do that, people need to sacrifice. So the organizations that are here in this room are making sacrifices under very difficult socio-economic problems caused by this regime, caused by President Robert Mugabe and his cabal. You see, the war veterans, the community that the regime is dissociating is going direct at the question of livelihood and the failure of economic performance under the political cabal led by President Mugabe. So the coordination that we thought was not there reflects the changes in the political economy of the state marked by poverty, hunger, and the decline in the economy. So the decline in the economy of the state affects also our activity. But like you saw in the 1980s leading to the NCA, we had a similar problem like that. But when the state started to behave in the manner it is behaving, naturally citizens diverge, naturally citizens respond. And this is what we're doing.
Thank you very much for that response, a very pointed one. Yes, I'll take two more questions and then we finish off and I'll then ask the panelists to give their last words.
I have noted with interest the respect to the human rights approach and the issues around the social things, but we haven't had a robust and frank discussion on the economic policies. We, more often than not, I noticed that all are still sticked or deeply entrenched in the post-Washington and neoliberal consensus. And we don't have much debate, and yet if you go by the report which was released 2 weeks ago by IMF, it accepts that austerity has failed, it accepts that liberalism and opening of markets have failed, and we have not had a discussion around that, and it seems like we'll go back to ground zero and we start again.
You're raising an economic question there. Any of the panelists who feel that they can respond to it are free to respond, and also people in the room, because I saw Dr. Rania earlier on responded to something. If you feel that you can respond to that question, please do so. Two more questions. Yes, my brother.
My name is I just wanted to find out, after the PRESA and the highly subscribed statement, what are the physical actions will you do as civil society to prove that a civil society is not loosely knitted?
Yeah, so the ball is back in civil society's courts. I don't know what you mean by physical actions, but I hope the panelists have been able to interpret the question. And perhaps maybe that's the last question. But I was going to also ask. Oh, you mean action, going onto the streets? Okay, I'm going to ask also Linda. I'm going to ask Memory to say something about one of the human rights defenders who is still incarcerated today. She wanted to make an appeal. She will do so after the panelists have responded to the questions. Thank you.
Yeah, let me try to attempt to answer, not to answer actually. I mean, it's a discussion. We are calling everybody to do a discussion around economic policies. I think anybody who has done political economy and you have studied that, you will discover that the anchor of any movement against the state works around economic policies. So I'll give you just a simple example of your Zim asset. It is a policy document that is supposed to be taking the state and its people somewhere. We have not set as Zimbabwe to accept, we were not consulted when that document was being crafted. And I'm sure you will agree with me that it has reached a stage where probably it is gathering dust, because you have that 10-pointer that the government, the president said, there is that discord which is there. So the policies that are meant to drive the state as well as the citizens, if they are in discord and there is no consultation, indeed, we are to blame ourselves, because we don't sit down and discuss certain things that make us go ahead. The statutory instrument, which was then just dumped in front of the people of Zimbabwe, where they were relying on in terms of their survival. They were surviving, or our parents, our grandparents, our grandparents in the rural areas were relying on supplies that were coming from South Africa through a certain policy which was pro-people. But when this policy was put in place by way of, they were saying they are trying to protect the industry, and I don't know if we have any industry to protect at all, but it is very important, it is very key for us to engage within these policies and find out how the citizens in Mfakos or in Mavuko, in Makoko, can actually confront some of these things.
Okay. Thank you very much, Mr. Francis.
No, I think, my brother, you are raising an important, ideological question. And I think, we need to discuss as Zimbabweans on, what is the best way forward in terms of, which consensus should we be following. But I think, from a civil society